Are you running a marathon? Oh, I could never run a marathon.
Sure about that? A marathon is like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick. Warwick runs on Instagram, YouTube. Really happy to have you here. Appreciate you tuning in. And this is going to be a little bit of a different episode. And so for this episode, I'm going to be super transparent with you. Having 3 episodes a week, aiming at having guests on in all of these 3 episodes every week can be hard sometimes. Sometimes it's difficult to plan things because of the time zones. Most of my guests are on the other side of the world. I'm in Norway, and the time zones, the time differences are not always working out. And that makes it harder to plan some of these conversations, but it also makes it easier to kind of you end up having mix-ups, or you end up having cancellations, whatever. And that doesn't mean that it's impossible to make all of this work. I mean, if I look at my last 116 or 117 episodes of the Marathon Podcast, I haven't had to kind of do what I'm doing today too many times. But sometimes when I don't have any guests lined up, and you might think that I have a lot of guests lined up, like far into the future, that I've recorded a lot of episodes when they come out, that's actually not the case. Most of the times I have recorded an episode on Sunday, like today, and the episode comes out tomorrow on Monday. And so although I've had 3 guests every week, most of them have actually been on the podcast just a couple of days or one day before the episode comes out. But anyways, in some of these cases, I might end up having to do what I'm doing today, and that is come up with stuff myself, talk about things. What kind of sucks about this one, though, is that I planned on doing that Boston episode that I did in the last episode, and then this one is coming out again on Monday. So 2 episodes in a row where there are no guests. But I hope and genuinely believe that this is a very useful episode as well. I hope that you'll stick around, because I'm going to talk about things that I think will be interesting, but also very useful to you. Because I think that a lot of the things that I've gone through over the last 2 years are very relatable to a lot of marathon runners or runners in general. And I also feel like after so many years of being a full-time athlete, I have a lot to contribute with. And there are some things that I just want to share. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about if I was to do my first marathon. I see a lot of questions about this. Like, do my first marathon, what is realistic? How should I approach this? What should I do? That is one of the things I want to talk about and maybe answer some of those questions. Coffee on race day, is that a yay or nay? Like, what should you do? I also want to touch on runner's knee or runner's injuries. I see a lot of questions about this as well. I feel like that is a question that is just being repeated and repeated and repeated everywhere I look, whether that is in comment sections or on Reddit or YouTube, wherever. So thought I would just touch on that since I've been dealing with that myself. I also want to start a new segment, which is called My Training Diary. And I've been talking about how my training has been going for a lot of these episodes. But what I haven't really done is like go through my week day by day. And I think especially after I started working with a coach, Jonathan Green, for those of you who don't know that, it seems like it's more of an interest. People are more curious about what I'm doing, what my week looks like. I'm super transparent, obviously, so I'm going to talk about this, but I also have an open Strava profile, so you can learn or read everything that I'm doing there. I also want to talk a little bit about my favorite YouTubers, creators, podcasts that I listen to that I think will be useful for you if you are into running or if you want to improve as a runner. So those are some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. I'm sure there will be more things, but just giving you a little bit of an overview here. So before we do that, I thought I would talk a little bit about this podcast. if you are new to this podcast, you might be like, what kind of podcast is this? Well, first of all, it's a podcast for all runners. There's usually marathon runners on this podcast guesting the pod. We're talking mostly about the marathon distance, but there are also some athletes, runners, professionals, like whether that is nutritionists or coaches who are into other distances as well. And the goal and the whole purpose of this podcast is to inspire, to educate, and to motivate you to get out there, but also guide you through your training, your performances. How do you perform better? How do you stay free of injuries? How do you get to the start line best prepared? But even if you're not into running, like just the physiology of training, of how the best athletes in the world are training, but also how your average Joe is training, working out, those things are important to me. And those are the things that I really want to be like come through in this podcast. And luckily, that is also the feedback that I'm getting, that it is useful for a lot of you guys listening, which I appreciate. And when I started this podcast in March of 2025, I never ever thought that we would be where we are today, where the podcast has thousands of listeners every week, and that it's grown into what it is. But obviously, I appreciate all of you, and I hope that I can keep on delivering the way I have been able to do over the last 10 months. So, for the podcast going forward, I don't think there will be that many changes. I am making this Boston series that you can start listening to. There have been a couple of 2 episodes of that already. I'm going to have a chat with Jess McClain tomorrow. So that episode will probably come out on Wednesday, which will be a combined episode of like talking to a pro, but also talking about Boston Marathon and how to prepare for that. For those of you who don't know, Jess McClain was the best female athlete or female American in Boston last year. So I'm sure she has a lot of things to help us or contribute with in terms of Boston. I will also dive more into the Australian running and the culture of Australian running, but also when it comes to the Sydney Marathon, gonna kind of build up to that. And I also hope that as time goes by and as I progress or have progress, hopefully, in the marathon distance myself, that I can have even more of, I don't know, not influence, but like that I can share more of the things that I'm doing. As of right now, I'm a 2:47 marathoner. And I do know that a lot of people will be like, well, that is also a very fast time. We would love to hear what you're doing. But I also feel like it will be easier for more people to trust me when I get down to those even faster times. But that being said, I do have a background as an athlete, and I do feel very confident in terms of like how to get to a good fitness level. I feel like I know exactly what it takes. And those are some of the things that I'm going to talk about in this podcast or this episode. And I think that is a good segue to start talking about like, if I did my first marathon, or if I was to do my first marathon in a few months, say you have just signed up for your first marathon, and I don't know how much time you have. Maybe you have 2 months, maybe you have 3 months, maybe you have a year. But I feel like regardless of how much time you have, I would probably approach it in the same way. So if you haven't already, you should definitely listen to the episode that I had 2 episodes ago with Udin, who ran a 4:24 in 2023. And then exactly 2 years later, he did 2:42. What he said was that the boring truth is that it's just consistency and just running, showing up every day. And I feel like that's something that we hear from a lot of athletes. But the one thing that I don't think enough people are talking about or focusing on, or maybe even realize, is that in the beginning, you don't really have to have too many threshold trainings or too many harder workouts. I think that too many people are thinking that, okay, I'm going to go out for a run like 4 to 5 times a week, or maybe a bit less. And then one of them or two of them are going to be really hard. And although that, like, that philosophy of having harder workouts or higher intensity workouts will help you eventually, like for me, I'm obviously adding that to my running, but I'm also up at a much higher mileage than people who are probably just starting out are. And for me, in my case, like I mentioned this in the last episode where I talked about Boston too, I still think that out of all the marathon blocks that I've had, maybe except for the one that I'm doing now, I feel like the best one that I did was the first one. I had 4 months to train for my first marathon. I did a 2:52, and I did feel like I started from scratch. I obviously had the background as an athlete, but I think I had like a year and a half or 2 years of almost no training, no structure, uh, and it was 2.5 years actually, and I felt really out of shape. And when I started, my main focus was just to get more kilometers, getting used to running. And the thing that, or the reason why I'm saying that it's so easy to, or the reason why I think it's so important to not focus too much on this uh, higher intensity workouts is that if you haven't been running a lot before, and so when I'm saying, or if you're running your first marathon, I'm not talking about someone who's already running a lot, like running fast 10Ks, running fast half marathons, or someone who's very used to running already. I'm talking about the ones that are maybe now starting out, like starting to think about running, and maybe the marathon distance seems like a cool goal to have. For those of us, and I'm saying us because I've been there myself, in the beginning, it's so hard to even run. So just getting out there and running is like a hard load on the body. So even when we're running and we think that we're running easy, it's most likely not easy. It's probably a bit harder, higher intensity. And so for me, for that first marathon block, I didn't even average one threshold week or threshold workout a week. I mostly had just easy runs. I felt like I had small niggles, small injuries. And with that, I tried to just run as easy as possible and make sure that I had things under control. And I think that this is something that we need to remember. And it kind of goes back to this thing where I was listening, or I was reading something on Reddit 2 days ago, where this person was asking, is lack of aerobic base zone 2 training an underrated reason people bunk in marathons? That was the headline, and or the main question. And I think it's such a good question, because I think that a lot of people end up doing much more zone 3 work or zone 4, going really hard. And then people tend to talk about this as like just one of the main reasons why you shouldn't do that is like uh, the fact that, you have a bigger chance of getting an injury. And yes, that is obviously part of it. But for me, it's never really been about the injury, especially when I was a speed skater, because we spent so much time on the bike, and it was not like that zone 3 or zone 4 would really give me those injuries, because the mechanical load wasn't that high, and like was used to training a lot. The thing that happened was just that I performed worse. Like my performance, especially on whether that was like easy bike rides or threshold workouts, my output was not as good. And so I think that for most of us, just starting out easy and making sure that we have that base that will give us that improvement. A great example is now that I am coaching my fiance a little bit. She's running her first half marathon in 7 months. And so I'm going to try to help her out and make sure she gets to that start line feeling fit, feeling good. And she decided to do this, I think, 2 or 3 months ago. That's when she told me that she wanted to sign up for this half marathon. And first of all, she hasn't been running a lot lately. She used to be a sprinter in high school, so it's like she was a short distance runner, 100-meter runner, and obviously coming from that, she doesn't have that much of an endurance in that way. And although she's a fit person, like she goes to berries and she's been working out a lot throughout her life, running longer runs, especially like approaching a half marathon, is new to her. And so what I told her was like 3 times a week, 3 times 30 minutes, because I know that she's been struggling with her knees previously. I did not want her to start too hard. And then we did a lactate test on the treadmill, figured out her zones. And based on that, I told her, you're not allowed to go above this. Maybe in the hills, you will get a little bit of a higher heart rate. But in general, overall, I do not want you to go above this. And she's been doing this. She's been very disciplined, stayed true to this since I gave her that first, like very informal training plan. Like obviously it's very casual. And it was interesting the other day because she went out cross country skiing. And then she told me that she's never had that low of a heart rate on her cross country ski session. And I've seen this so many times with several athletes, with myself, that doing that low intensity training really gives you more room to work in those lower zones. And it might seem a bit weird, but the threshold workouts and the harder workouts will obviously help you when you are trying to push yourself a little bit more, to improve your VO2 max or improve your endurance, like add higher endurance, higher intensity performances. But when it comes to just making that zone 1 feel bigger or zone 2 feel bigger, and when I'm saying bigger, I mean like the amount of work you can do there and the output you can actually have. So like if a very simple measure would be the pace, right? So for me now, I can much more easily run the like a sub 3 marathon pace in zone 2 than I could before previously. And the thing is that with running, it doesn't mean that the mechanical load is zone 2. Like if we were to use zones for mechanical load, that's another story, like a different discussion. But the point is that my zone 1 and 2, like now I'm so much better there. And in the marathon, like depending on how fast you are, what you're aiming at, most of your work will be done in zone 2 to 3, right? So in an ideal world, you will start out in zone 2. I know people who have average zone 2 throughout the marathon, like touching zone 3 at the end, but it's really hard to still push yourself more because you're running for so long. And the threshold intensity, just to define that, is obviously however hard you can run or push for an hour-ish. And so whatever heart rate that is your threshold. Then there is that is also rule of thumb, because for those people who are super fit, they might measure their lactate and be like, okay, this is your threshold, but then you are able to push that a bit longer. So the best marathon runners will probably spend much more time on threshold during a race than someone who's not as fit. For me, I see that I can spend much more time in zone 3 during a marathon, but I can't touch zone 4 too much, because if I do, then I'm dead, and then it's going to be really hard to even stay in zone 3. So that is like the definition of the thresholds. So all that just to say that you do want to have quite a capacity at zone 1 and 2. And all of this is super complex. I'm not giving this advice to someone who's like really trying to push their marathon PRs and who's already running a lot. But to someone who's running their first marathon, or if you have someone close to you who's running their first marathon and they don't really have a coach, have them go out and do a lot of zone 1 and zone 2 work. It's going to feel super weird because in the beginning, you might feel like you have to walk. Like, use the hills for walking. You don't have to run in the hills. Walk. I can promise you that you will have progress doing it that way. And yes, there is a chance that you could run even faster if you try to push yourself and push yourselves. But I also feel like the chances of, yeah, like I said, injuries, that's one thing. But the other thing is just like bonking, your body not functioning, lack of energy, all of that. That is something that you might struggle with if you are not good enough at uh, staying in those lower zones. And I usually make this, I think I talked about it before. I use this metaphor of a glass that is half full. I would much rather be on the start line with a glass that is like half full or maybe less than half full. And with that, I see that the water in this glass is zone 3, zone 4 work. And when I get to the race, that glass is just filling up, but I have so much to work with. I feel like if I've been pushing too much, had too much high intensity work, then that glass would be full and it will just kind of just spill, or the glass will get full and I can't really perform. And that's where your legs and your body will just stop working, stop performing, stop helping you. And when you are tired, you don't really have that much left. So those are things that I really thought about that um, that would help a lot. And also just keep in mind that this Norwegian method, like Christian Blumenfeld, the best triathlete in the world, at least one of them, he just tested a 101 VO2 max, and he's not a small person. So like that is a an incredible test to have performed and done. And they are the pioneers in with the Norwegian method, and the way they are training intensity control. It's just very cool. And if you want to learn more about it, I suggest you look up the Norwegian method. But there's so much in there where, as Norwegians, we're taught pretty early on that when you are training, when you're working out, 75 to 80% should be in zone 1 and 2. And then you have the majority of the last 20% in zone 3, and then you add some zone 4 and 5 in there as well, which usually will be races, not that many VO2 max workouts, especially for the longer distances. It's important to emphasize that the more endurance specific your sport is, or aerobic your sport is, the more important this will be. Those are my thoughts on this, and I think that they're pretty valid. I would definitely, like, if I went into coaching now and someone didn't run a lot, which I'm gonna kind of do with my fiance, these are the things that I would talk about. The other thing, and this is a big mistake that I made, and I learned a lot about this by having this podcast, would be to just be better at fueling before, during, and after workouts, or even easy runs. I felt like I needed to lose weight, and honestly, I still do. But I also see great effect of being good at fueling. And if I don't, I see the consequences in terms of, especially in terms of injuries. And also like over focusing on staying hydrated throughout the day. Alfie Manthorpe, who was on the podcast a few episodes ago, talked about how important that had been to him in terms of having that steady energy throughout the day. So that is also something that I would focus more on. So like if you are doing your first marathon, please don't try to combine that with losing weight, especially like by eating less. If you see that, like me, that you can maybe eat less candy or less cake, less chips, that is fine. Like most likely that is not something that you really need, but don't take any of the important nutrition away, and don't run fasted. Don't try to like avoid having that post meal snack just because you feel like you want to make your body burn that off more after. It doesn't work that way. That's not going to make you run faster. So you do have to choose. Do you want to lose weight, or do you want to run faster? Do you want to stay injury free? And do you want to be able to finish that marathon? So those are some of the thoughts that I've had on this. And I guess like adding to that, I did mention, should you have coffee on race day? Because I feel like people are talking a lot about carb loading, all of that. And I think it's fine. Like, it's interesting to talk about carb loading. I uh, think that it's easy to overthink this as well. But there's like one thing that for me is interesting, because you obviously hear about people having to hit the porta potties during the race. And for me, I love my coffee. I have coffee every day, but on race day, I never do. I trust that my body doesn't need it that much on race day. That's not something that I want to prioritize. I have the last cup of coffee maybe 24 hours before the race, and that's it. And I'm kind of curious about this. Like, please let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. But I feel like if you are struggling with your stomach being a bit upset, or needing to go more than maybe uh, you want to on race day, especially when the race has started, my hot tip would be to actually not have that coffee. I know that some people want to just start their body, get the body going. My tip is actually like, or what I'm always doing is just heading out for 5-10 minute long run, just maybe not even that, and just try to start my body that way. So I would not, or I do not have coffee on race day. I know that a lot of people do, but curious about your thoughts on that. But if you don't really need it, or if that's not something that you need to start, like get your body and your system started, I recommend not doing that on race day unless you know that it works. After my first marathon, which was in 2023, I remember that I had so much pain in one of my knees walking down the stairs the day after. My first reaction was, obviously, I've done a marathon, and I've also done 2 marathons within the last 5 weeks, because I was stupid enough to do a full marathon in training at marathon pace. So, like, all out kind of in training 5 weeks prior to that marathon. The problem was that this pain didn't go away. It was on the outside of my knee, and started looking it up. Went for a run with my good friend Tiril, who's, yeah, she's actually won several Olympic gold medals, world champion in biathlon. And she was like, "Oh my, no, did you kind of like run so much that you got the runner's knee?" And I was like, "I don't know what is runner's knee." And then eventually I learned that that's what I had. And runner's knee is kind of just a term that we use for pain that is, I guess, like, in some ways actually just that comes as a consequence of running a lot. Anyways, this one specifically, I think most people can relate to. Most people have heard about it or felt it, and that is when your IT band is getting tight. So, like, from your hip and down over your knee, there's like a band going there, and it's called the IT band. And if that is tight, you will get this pain on the outside of your knee. Maybe you won't feel it during the like normal activities, but as soon as you start running, you will start feel it eventually. And this kept me from running for about a year, or almost a year. And there were a few things that helped. One thing that I talked about quite a lot is like I got myself a pair of barefoot shoes, and I was able to start running again. But I felt like it still wasn't enough. Like, it wasn't sustainable. Yes, it worked a little bit with those shoes, but then I felt like it came back a little bit, and I couldn't really figure it out. I went to PT, and I was given some exercises. Some of the exercises didn't really work. At least I didn't think they did, until I realized that I needed more assistance. And so for me, I started using these exercises that really worked for me. And so now I have like one gym strength training routine that I use whenever I feel something on the outside of my knee. You can look at the Warwick runs on YouTube if you want to see the exercises on video. But in short, I use an elastic. And one of the things that I realized, like I said, I didn't have enough resistance. So I used the typical exercises for IT band syndrome, the runner's knee, where I was lying on the floor on my side and I was lifting my leg sideways up in the air, and uh, didn't feel that heavy. Like it wasn't really hard to do, but I still kept on doing them. And I realized that, okay, the resistance I have is not enough, because most of the running injuries that we're facing will be due to a weakness. And that's something that I realized now, even with my hamstring, like it's been sore a bit. And then as soon as I have a strength training, I can walk away from that and feeling, okay, now it's better. And then I can do another few days of running and then I might have to hit the gym again. It's so apparent, like so obvious that strength training is imperative to staying free of injuries. And I can even feel it just like before and after. I've even had runs where I've done, like I've felt pain and then I have this strength training that I'm talking about that you can look up on YouTube, uh, and then I can go out for a run. And I think that that's like that workout speaks for itself. But in short, I'm going to try to explain what I'm doing. I'm having an elastic around my ankle. I'm having the elastic behind me, and then I'm standing there with some tension on the elastic, pulling it towards me. So like my knee goes up in front of me and then back and forth. Like I do 20 of those on each leg. I've been also doing like 3 times 20 on those. Now I'm trying to be better at doing them more every day, so I don't have to do 3 times 20 for that specific session. But that has helped a lot. And then I do the same thing where instead of lying down, actually, I'm just standing up and I'm having the elastic around my ankle still, but then I'm standing sideways. So if I'm working on my right leg or my right hip, I will stand. So I have the elastic on my left side and again with some tension, and then kind of just pulling it outwards. So the right leg will go to the right and push, and that really works on the right side of my hip. And then I do the same thing with my left leg, obviously with the same exercise. I also do 20 on each leg with this. But then I also do the same thing. So say I was standing there with the elastic on my left side, same position as with the exercise that I just explained or described. And then I use my left leg. And then it's the inside of my thigh or my groin that is getting the work. Those 3 exercises have been crucial. And I think like some of the most important ones for me in terms of getting rid of the runner's knee or working on the IT band. Another exercise that have been really important that I learned from my PT last year was the one where I'm on Bosu ball, a balancing ball, like half ball. I don't know what you call this. You can see them in the video on YouTube. On those, I'm doing pistol squats, and I am focusing a little bit more on when pushing back up, I have my knee out, and that will make sure that your hip is doing more of the work. So I'm doing 10 on each leg 3 times on with those 2. And those are really, really hard. And especially the times where I've had pain, I can really tell that my hips are weak there and it's really hard to do it. And I think that is a great example, or like it just proves that you need to work more on it. The next exercise that I'm doing is, I think it's called Bulgarian deadlift, where I'm having some weights in my hand, the opposite hand of my or arm of the leg that I'm standing on, still on the Bosu ball, upside down on all of these exercises, and then just leaning forward. You can see it in the video again. And then the last one, just to work more on my hamstrings. I've realized how important the hamstrings are for running, and especially like to work on the strength on those, using a big ball. Again, look at the video and work on the hamstrings that way. If that is too hard, just keep both of your legs on the ball and roll out, so like you get your legs in a 90-degree angle and then stretch them out on the ball and keep your hips up in the air and make sure that it's a straight line between your thighs and your hips and your stomach. And then obviously adding some core training to this has also been something that I've tried to focus more on lately. I think that it's easy to underestimate the core training a little bit. So that is the strength routine that I've been using quite a lot to make sure that I stay free of injuries. And whenever I'm feeling something, I'm just heading back to that routine. So that is an advice. I see this question everywhere, honestly. Probably every day when I open Reddit and the running threads, I will see people asking this question. So I hope that this was helpful. It's helped me a lot. And it kind of made me go from not being able to run one day to being able to run the other. Obviously, it also is important to consider what shoes you're wearing, not in terms of like what shoes are the best, but what shoes are best for you. And I did also have a great effect of running with barefoot shoes, the Ultra shoes. Not really wearing them anymore because I'm doing the strength training. I found shoes that really work for me, but that was something that really worked for me at some point earlier last year. I did tell you that I was going to add this segment called My Training Diary. I stole this concept or segment from a Norwegian podcast that I've been listening to lately, where this cross country skier is uh, making a summary or giving a summary of his week. And I thought that I would do the same thing just because I've felt like people are more curious about what I'm doing now that I'm working with John. And to be clear, what John is doing is that he's helping me structuring the week in terms of days of workouts. He's prescribing workouts for me, but the rest of the week, like he tells me the mileage that he wants me to have. And the rest of the week, I am kind of organizing, structuring myself. This week started a bit differently than most weeks because last weekend I had some friends over. We were just a few of my closest friends that are my groomsmen for my upcoming wedding. We're having a civil ceremony in May, so we spent the day at a spa. But then at the end of the night, we were having a bit more fun. It got late. We were having a few drinks. I don't really drink that much, but we had more than, to put it this way, it was more drinks than what I would like to have the day before a 30K, 19-mile long run. And so Sunday was a day off, and I agreed with John that we would do the long run on Monday. So on Monday, I did 30.37 kilometers. I combined that with getting a new sports watch. I got the Garmin Forerunner 970. I'm gonna make a review later on between that one, the Coros Pace 4, and the Apple Watch. So stay tuned for that. But anyways, I love trying to combine some of my longer runs with doing something like that, running to the sports store, just because sometimes it's really hard to get out in the morning, and that just like makes it a bit easier because I feel like it's convenient as well. I decided to do this one a little bit faster than I would do an easy run. So my easy runs have typically been around eight to maybe 8 to 8:30, honestly, per mile, or 5 to 5:30 per kilometer. But and then my heart rate for my easy runs have been also pretty low. So say this one where it was 5 minutes and 10 seconds per kilometer for almost 16 kilometers was the week before. Then my average heart rate was 120. For the long run on Monday, I decided to go a little bit faster. It was not super fast. I had some kilometers here and there where I was hitting a bit of a faster pace, but my average pace was 4:39 per kilometer. Sorry that I'm mixing between miles and kilometers here. Anyways, my average heart rate for this one was 134, which is still per definition zone 1 for me. And so it was a higher mechanical load, but I also try to do a little bit of that on some of the long runs, and then I'm keeping it slower on the easy runs. So a good workout on or long run on Monday. Then I decided together with John that we were pushing the workouts a bit, like one day down the road. Like, how do you say? We pushed the workouts that were supposed to be on Tuesday and Friday to Wednesday and Saturday, just because I had that long run on Monday. And so on the day after, so on Tuesday, I just went for a 10K, 6 mile long, very easy run. I do like to have the days after my easy runs to be pretty easy, whether that is a rest day or just very short little run, just to play it safe. So that was a hard run to get out on. I had a long work day and went to the hairdresser. There were things that I did. So it's a great example that sometimes it is really hard to get out. I got out at 5 p.m. and at 5 p.m. here in Norway right now, it's getting dark. So I was not super motivated to get out there. And then on Wednesday, early in the morning or fairly early, we were going up to the cabin for my grandpa's 90th birthday. So we combined that with a cabin trip. And then I had a workout, the workout that I talked about on the podcast in the last episode. And I always have 15 to 20 minutes of warm up before these workouts. And now that it's winter, I do these workouts on the treadmill, but I combine it with a dog run when I'm warming up. So I take Oakley, my dog, out, and we go out together. On Wednesday, we ran 3 kilometers. It's interesting sometimes in the morning. I don't know if you felt this, but I'm trying to run a little bit faster for my warm up just to prepare my body. But when I'm doing them in the morning, almost first thing after getting up, this pace does not come easy at all. So for this workout, I had 5:01 per kilometer, and I really felt like I was pushing it, but my heart rate was not higher. It's just like there's something about that feeling. And then I went on the treadmill. First of all, very impressed with the Forerunner because it was much more accurate than any of the other watches that I've tried on the treadmill, combined with the normal, just not the new fancy Garmin heart rate strap, but like the old one. Went on a treadmill. I was supposed to have paces between 3:38 and 3:30, I think it was. And we were doing 8 by K. And like I said in the last episode, John told me to be so tired at the end of it that I would struggle to do 200 meters more. I was supposed to be able to, but it would be really hard and a struggle. And what I didn't mention the last time was how much rest I had between. It said 2 to 3 minutes, so that's what I had. Sometimes it was 3 minutes in the beginning because I thought that's what I read, and then I realized it was 2 to 3 minutes. And I did talk about this workout in the last episode. It was so good. I ended up at 3:20 because I was not able to get even close to that feeling at 3:30 that John prescribed to me. And we agreed that for the next time we're doing this workout, I just need to have higher pace than what we first thought. And I also did some lactate readings, and they were really good. All in all, just a very, very good workout. And then I had 15 minutes of cool down. So that was like the first time since I started working with John that I've been going that hard. And like I said, I didn't even manage to make it as hard as we were supposed to. But I think that it's also kind of a good thing. And back to what I talked about in the beginning, it's totally fine to every now and then have these really hard workouts. But I think it's also like a good example of what I was saying, that I've been now working with John since October and November, or like we started running properly in November. And February 4th is when I had my first like really hard workout with John. So everything else has been like zone 3-ish. And I think that says it all. And then on Thursday, I did an easy run. And we went up to the cabin. It was really cold. I think I talked about this one on the last episode because that was the same day as I recorded. It was so cold, snowy, icy, not much grip. But I was surprised by how good the ASICS Nova Blast 5 were in terms of grip. So that was good. Nothing much to report about. 15 kilometers, 505 pace. Felt really good. The next day was kind of the same. I used a Super Blast 2. They were much more slippery. So, like, if you are an ASICS person, go with the Nova Blast 5 if you are running on slippery conditions. That was a much better shoe to use for that. 17.7 kilometer, 500 per kilometer. Felt really good on that run. Felt like I could keep on running. A great example of a day where you just feel like, okay, I can add a couple of kilometers more than I was planning to do here. Didn't really have a plan for this one, but I usually just go out and see how far I'm like feeling like doing that day. I usually have like a minimum because I know that John usually writes at the like on my training plan like what the plan is for the week in terms of the mileage. And for this week, knowing that there would be actually 2 long runs within one like week, Monday to Sunday, I knew that I was looking at 100 and almost 120K this week. And so just based on that, I needed to adjust that. And also knowing that today we're going to drive all the way down from the cabin down here, which was 6 hours. And then my friends were skating in the Olympics. Congratulations to Sander, who won the Olympics today, and Ragnar, who won a silver medal yesterday. A lot of fun, but that also meant that I was not going to get my runs in today. So I asked him to if it was okay to combine just 2 of the workouts, one that I had on Saturday and the long run that I had today. And so the workout that I was supposed to have yesterday on Saturday was 8 by K at threshold with like warm up and cool down. So a pretty like easy threshold workout really. And then today I was supposed to have 30 to 32K of running. So I ended up doing 30K yesterday. John said it was okay to do that, but he wanted me to start with the workout. So I did 20 minutes of warm up. Then I went out then I started my threshold. And I can tell you that I wore the Nova Blast 5, but I can tell you that doing a threshold workout, faster paces, I was supposed to have, what was it, 340 to 348 or something like that. Doing that on ice and snow, that is not recommended. And it was not a lot of fun. It was also windy. So the paces did not come very easy to me. I felt like I was working really hard and was not a workout for my confidence. That's for sure. So didn't feel amazing with that. I did have I was able to hit some of these paces where it was like, first one was the let's see what it says here. I'm actually not sure if it works like this on Strava, so I can't really tell you. I think that they were around 350, somewhere 345. And then at the end, when I was running uphill and had headwind, I ended up having 405 or something like that. Anyways, after the workout was done, I was up at around 14, 15 kilometers in total. And I had a 409 average pace. And that's when my long run started. And I thought that I would have the same strategy as the long run on Monday, where I would go a little bit faster than my normal easy run. But I started out at 446 per kilometer on the next one, which is, I guess, 740 something per mile. And then slowly started moving down faster. So I had a lot of case around 430-ish, a bit faster than that. And then at the end, it would end up being a bit progressive. I think it was a little bit downhill, and I eventually got a little bit more grip. And so I had some more marathon pace at the end. The fastest one was 348. But all in all, a great week. Ended up with 117, 118 kilometer I guess that is around 72 miles in a week, which is the highest mileage that I've ever had in a week. I think it's amazing when I like can feel so good, and I feel like also what John is doing now is really just dialing me in to that mileage, to the intensity. But I also feel like the way that I'm solving these easy runs now, it's like maybe the main reason why I'm having so much progress. And so that brings me to this thing that I wanted to touch on before we talk more about like the progress that I'm having. But I see a lot of people talking about what they call useless running. And useless running to a lot of people is like, oh, I'm running so slow that I don't feel like I'm able to run technically well. I don't feel like I have a great form when I'm running at that pace. I don't feel like that's going to help me in terms of my running when I'm going to race this pace. But I was talking to my dad yesterday or the day before because he's also doing a marathon in a month or so. And we were talking about how it's so cool to see how the easy running is making me like I'm able to run more. So that is one thing that, and don't think people will argue against the fact that like if you run so slow that you barely feel like you're moving, you will be able to run more because it's a less of a load on the body. But then some people might argue, yeah, but you don't really have an effect of that, then you might as well walk. I disagree with that. I think that it doesn't matter. First of all, even at 7 minutes per kilometer, even slower than that, you're still jogging. So like that's the fact. Like you are jogging. So that is um, a good thing in the first place. It is running, but what I've seen now, it's been 2 or 3 weeks of me exaggerating these easy runs, and I don't think that it's random that my workouts are getting better as well. That I'm feeling so good on the 400s. I feel like I have a higher pace within me, like in me. Like when I'm running the 400s, I feel like it's easier to run fast. When I'm running the 8x K earlier this week and I end up at 320 at the last one, that's faster than I've ever been able to do before. And I also think that is a result of obviously the combination of the workouts and the easy running. But again, back to this glass that I'm talking about. By making sure that I have enough easy running, I'm just giving myself room and my body room to recover and get ready for that day when I'm supposed to go hard, whether that is a workout or a race. And I also feel like in that way, I would be able to get up tomorrow and probably do fairly well in a marathon. I'm not saying that I would be in peak shape, but I would still do fairly well. Because what I didn't say about that run that I did yesterday, the long run, I had 4:16 average pace. So almost like sub 3 marathon pace for that 30K. I felt like I could have just kept on running and I was not tired. My average heart rate was 350. No, sorry, 151. And remember that within there, I had like quite a lot of harder marathon pace. Like I was even jogging and when I was supposed to have rest between the Ks because I just didn't want to get cold. And so I had almost 10K of what you would call like marathon pace, but or a bit faster than that at times too. And then the rest of it was like what I would consider a little bit faster than easy runs. And I did 4:16, and I'm very happy with that. Like I know that I have to run like 30 seconds faster per kilometer when I get to the marathon to reach my goal, but it's still good. And like it just proves that my foundation, my base, whatever shape now is pretty good. And I also wanted to touch on this when I'm talking about this because I got back from that workout. I was like 4:16. Okay, yeah, that's not that fast. Like I started kind of just talking myself down a little bit. And then I realized that Christian, like if you go back a year or maybe less than that, like even in the last marathon block, and you did 416 average for 30K and you felt the way that you did, like you weren't even tired. Like I was tired at the last 2 kilometers because I was pushing it. I was doing like 345, 350. And so then I started breathing a bit more. But other than that, I felt like I could have just kept on going. I didn't feel like the marathon distance was intimidating at all. Um, it was just a new feeling in a new world to me, honestly. But I forgot to kind of just appreciate that and give myself credit for that. And that's something that I also think is so important. And if you are running your first marathon, or if you have run your first marathon, or if you've done several marathons, stop for a minute, for a second, for a few hours to give yourself some credit and appreciate that progress that you're having. I think that is so important. We forget to do that. Like Odin said in the episode a couple of episodes ago, in the US, if you're most likely an American listening to this, but if you are, you guys are so good at kind of just giving credit to people for just running a marathon in the first place. It doesn't really matter how fast you ran. And that is something that I really admire you guys for. Because here in Norway, and I do see that like a lot everywhere, like some people are still like, you totally, regardless of what nationality you are, it's still all about that time. And we tend to just like focus on that so much, whether it's on Strava or on the results. So the marathon is not necessarily about time. It's about finishing and having that progress, feeling like, oh, this time the marathon distance wasn't that hard. Oh, this time for my long run, I was able to do 30K and I'm not dead. Those are things that we should appreciate, things that we should be really proud of. And I'm going to try to be better at that. Like looking at this workout, I'm really proud of it. Not because it's so incredibly good. It doesn't scare anyone who's like looking at it. But a year ago, I would have been super proud to have this workout with a 416 average for 30K on like on a perfect day. Yesterday, I did it on ice and snow. I barely had grip for most of the run, and I'm still able to do that. So I just want to give myself some credit and appreciate that. And I'm going to try to be better at doing that going forward. We are getting closer to the end of this chat. And I did mention in the last episode that I'm going to try to be better at doing YouTube. At the end of this episode now, like in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite YouTubers. But I started like my whole career, everything that I'm doing today, whether it's with running or with filmmaking, which is like my profession, everything started with documenting my journey. And when I started running, my fiance Christine, she was like, you need to document this journey. That can be fun. And so I did. So if you want to see like my full journey from that first day of running in 2023 up until that first marathon, or my journey to the Boston Marathon, you can watch all of that on Warwick Runs on YouTube. But I have been kind of bad at doing that lately. So I did document my last marathon in Trondheim. And because I'm a filmmaker, I'm such a perfectionist. And so when I received that text from Chris Striegel and from Life in Stride, a great podcast, last week, where he said, you need to keep up YouTube, I was like, yeah, I should try to get back at it. And it's been really hard because I want everything to be perfect, and I'm going to try to leave that behind. But I'm also going to try to maybe dedicate 1 or 2 days a week to filming and editing those videos. And maybe this time I'm going to go all in on this and spend a bit even less time working on client work, which is super risky. Like I'm going to kind of say no to some of the things that are bringing the money in and try to give it my all on this podcast and on my own content. So I guess like I'm now committing a little bit to it, I'm holding myself accountable by just saying this and telling you guys that I will do that. But I would also love for you guys to comment down below, what do you want to see? Because I'm a 247 marathoner. I do have a job. I have more flexibility than a lot of people. So I have some unfair advantages there. But I also would love to know what you guys want to see, what you appreciate with YouTubers. Like, I'm no Jake Bearclough. Like, I guess in terms of the production quality, I'm probably closer to Eric Floberg because we're both filmmakers, but I don't have kids. So, what is it that you want to see? What is it that is inspiring? What are you guys curious about? I'm obviously sharing things on this podcast, but it will be a different format. I will probably still try to perfect it as much as I can with lights and making it cinematic, but there will also be times where that will not be possible. So, trying to commit a little bit more to that going forward, documenting the things that I'm doing. I really hope to go to Tokyo. Lately it's been a little bit up in the air whether I'm able to go or not. Like, Boston is still the main goal, but uh, we'll see. There are some things that I need to figure out. But anyways, like, documenting the journey to those bigger races, I think will be something that I would like to do. And I just need you guys' help a little bit on what you guys want to see. And with that, I think it's also nice to, this running community, it's not that big. And I believe that by helping each other out, we are helping ourselves out, all of that. And so I thought that I would just give you guys some recommendations, some things that I've found very useful over the last few months or years, and YouTubers, podcasts, creators that I've been following. If I was to talk about YouTube first, I love Cole Gibbons, Cole Running on YouTube. He is such a nice guy, and it's also cool to see how he's improving. The quality of his videos are constantly getting better, and it's a lot of fun to just see that he's evolving as a filmmaker, creator, but also as a runner, and he's very transparent, and I really appreciate that. Easy to watch, fun to follow, and it's also cool to see, and maybe that's something I need to learn from, that some of his videos are super high quality and some of them are more like just him talking to the camera on the run, and more easy content, if you can call it that. So, but really recommend him if you are into the YouTube game. I also would actually like to recommend, and he's Norwegian. I hope that he has some English subtitles on. He did very well at Norseman this year. An Ironman ending at a mountain, crazy. Iver Anton Kronstad. I will link all these recommendations down below. He is a big runner, like running influencer in Norway. He does a lot of things, and it's been fun to follow him. And he has some pretty high end productions. He's been getting help from, especially a friend of mine, Håvard, who's really really good at making films. And yeah, I've found that to be very inspiring. So I also recommend him. I feel like most of you guys, you know about all these like big names, big creators that are making content, but I've been really enjoying those two. Those are two that I've found inspiration. Like, they've inspired me to go out when I've not been motivated myself, and I really appreciate that. I also love to follow Jimmy Whelan, who was on the podcast. It's the most most streamed episode ever on the podcast. Former professional cyclist, now turned professional runner. He just announced that he signed a deal with Salomon, which is super exciting. So head over to his channel. I'm sure there will be more content coming there. And then the GOAT, obviously, Alex Yee. I love him and the content that he's putting out there. I really hope that they will keep making those series, because it's been so much fun to follow. I've just really loved following his journey towards Valencia and London last year. In terms of podcasts, I mentioned several times Life in Stride. These boys are great. Like Chris Striegel, he quit his job to go full time with the podcast and coaching. I love listening to them. Honestly, like some of the best episodes are the bantering episodes that they're having, where they're just talking about things between the three of them, Danny, Scotty, and Chris Striegel. It's been a lot of fun to see how they have just gone from runners who are genuinely very interested in running to now having a very successful and big podcast based in Louisville, Kentucky. And yeah, just a podcast that I really recommend. And I think I said it before, they were a huge inspiration to me starting this podcast in the first place. Then I've really enjoyed Sweat Elite with Matt Fox. He is such a fun and nice guy, and I really enjoy that podcast because it feels like you get people who really know what they're talking about, and they have a lot of updates on the running world and also on training, and they have a lot of knowledge, and they're fast marathoners. I mean, Matt Fox is a sub 220 marathoner, so a lot of fun things to listen to there. And I've also really enjoyed Inspired Souls by Carolyn, who's been on the podcast in 2 episodes earlier in January. The Marathon Handbook, I was listening to an episode with Alex here and Sam Parsons yesterday, and really, really enjoyed that one. Really recommend that if you haven't checked out Marathon Handbook. And I mean, there are so many good podcasts out there, and every now and then I find one and I listen to one episode and I love that. But those are definitely the ones that are on the top of my list these days that I've been listening to on all of my runs. So I guess that is, those are my recommendations. When it comes to creators, I would love to just bring up Herm Runs, who's been on the podcast. I love him. I also feel like he's contributing to a better world. And Kofuzi, I have so much respect for the both of them, and especially lately. I mean, as now considering myself half American, it breaks my heart to see what's going on, and those people just standing up. I really appreciate that and respect them for that. And sometimes it does feel like it's a bit useless to have a podcast talking about running. But I also feel like it's a great place to have for all of us in the arena, where we can focus on running and do that. But I still appreciate it. It makes me happy, and it gives me hope to see people like Herm Runs and Kofuzi using their platforms the way they are. So just want to say thank you for that. I'm not an American citizen or anything like that. I'm marrying an American, but it gives me hope and makes me happy to see that. So those are the creators that I'm the most fan of these days. And there are more people as well and more platforms, but those are the ones that I wanted to bring up today. And I hope that this episode was okay. I hope that although it was very different than me just yapping, I hope that you feel like you got something out of it. And I hope that you feel like you didn't waste your time, or I didn't waste your time. And just last thing before we end the episode, please head over to the marathonpodcast.com, support non-professional athletes by buying the marathon hat. All the profit from the sales of the hats will go back to the Marathon Podcast sponsorship. If you want to support this podcast and me, please just use the codes down below, Christian, for 20% off annual subscription in Strava, and the code down below for a FlexBeam if you want some red light therapy. Really happy that you, or grateful to you for tuning in. I appreciate you, and have a good run if you are not done with yours yet. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wild Studio.